Welcome back to Clinical Veterinary Recruiting Insights. I'm your host, Brad McMillan of RPM Research. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Stephanie Morley. Dr. Morley has had an interesting career going from small animal medicine to working in industry within a large contract research organization and moving into academia and a business development role. You're founding a company and now leading a medical device company. So, Dr. Morley, thank you for joining the podcast and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to travel back through time and some of your history and origin story, if you will. How'd you get into veterinary medicine to begin with?
Well, I did not grow up wanting to be a veterinarian. I was a little odd that way because I feel like everybody at some point wants to be a vet. And definitely when I got into veterinary medicine, I felt like everyone had wanted to be James Harriet and except me. So yeah, I mean, I was doing my undergrad at Michigan State, and it was in hospitality business. So I actually wanted to work in the ski industry. I wanted to work in hotels and, kind of be part of helping manage the experience for people who are vacationing and get to live where, I would want to vacation.
Sure.
I wasn't really finding any jobs that excited me at that time. At least, a lot of the jobs I was going for, you didn't really, I guess, have to have the college degree to do them. And so there was a lot of competition for everyone else who wanted to live in Colorado. So it was genuinely just a conversation I was having with someone. And they said, well, if you could do anything, what would it be? And I said, well, being a vet could be cool. And that was it. Like something clicked for me. Like, wait, being a vet could be cool. I love dogs. I love cats, So I went back to my advisor back at Michigan State and said, this is what I think I want to do. And they told me that it was going to be like 3 years of prerequisites. And I was just graduating with my bachelor's degree. And I'm like, I don't have 3 years. So I piled up everything. I took like 20 credits a semester to do my prereqs. And, they said, that's crazy. Like, and I'm like, well, isn't vet school like 20 credits? And they're like, I remember her going, well, yeah. I'm like, then isn't it good preparation? So,
well, you were stacking the sciences too.
Yeah, I hadn't taken a science class since sophomore year of high school. I was not a science person. I was English and then, business. I just loved, I was more, I don't know. But not science, that's for sure. And so I did it. I took all my science classes and I treated, my education like a job. I just took it seriously. Ended up doing amazingly well and applied to vet school and got in.
Fantastic. So you said, when you were getting in, you liked cats, you liked dogs. So you were interested in that companion animal route from the early versions.
Yeah, I mean, I was so new to veterinary medicine. I didn't even know what else you could do in vet med. Like, I mean, I knew that, there were probably cow vets and there were probably horse vets, but I didn't know the industry.
Right.
But my initial interest in it was for companion animal because that's what I knew. We always grew up with dogs and cats and my vision, what I thought I was wanting was to just own a small animal practice one day and that would be my life.
Sure. So you transitioned from companion animal pretty hardcore into preclinical research and development. Tell me a little bit about the impetus for that transition and what you went through.
Yeah, it was a rough couple of years. I graduated and took a job out in Albuquerque, and there were just some bad things that had gone down with the person who had owned the hospital. They had sold it to corporate that stayed on as the hospital director. And I ended up being in solo practice about 3 or 4 months after I graduated from so it was corporately owned, but I was the only vet there at that point. So I was literally thrown to the wolves. I mean, we were $1 million+ revenue hospital in a very economically diverse community of Albuquerque. And we had a staff of, I think, 12 people. And if I quit, you know, everyone's in the hospital is going to close. So, I relied heavily on relief veterinarians. I owe some of those people so much for being such amazing mentors to me. I used to wear a pager into the room to pretend like it worked. So if there was something happening in the exam room and I didn't know, I needed to look something up, I would pretend my pager was going off and they needed me back in the treatment room. Vin was by far my greatest mentor. I relied on Vin heavily. In the 5-minute vet consult. I don't even know if they still have those, but yeah, so it was a crazy year. I managed to hire 2 more veterinarians and get the hospital staffed up. And then I left because I was completely burnt out. So I went back to Michigan and started working for the hospital that was my family hospital. And I intended to buy the practice. But at that time we did our own emergencies, despite there being a emergency clinic in town. And it was me and 2 other veterinarians, and I was the only woman, and I wasn't comfortable coming in for emergencies. I had started a family, and I just wasn't comfortable coming in at 2:00 in the morning with ketamine in the hospital, and
Sure.
we, it wasn't comfortable. So the only option I had was to go part-time, and then I wouldn't have to do on-call. And that wasn't a financial possibility for my family. And so I had to leave, but I had a 30-mile non-compete. And so my only option was a preclinical contract research organization that fortunately was in my area. And I pivoted into lab animal medicine.
Oh, it's almost a happy accident.
It almost was. Yeah. I mean, it was I could go on for hours about why the suicide rate is what it is in veterinary medicine, or my opinion on that.
Sure.
The personalities that go into veterinary medicine, and then how hard the actual practice of veterinary medicine can be for those personalities. It was a really rough couple of years, and sometimes I'm sad that it didn't end up going the way that I had envisioned when I got into it. But I'm also incredibly grateful for the career that I've built from it. So it just wasn't meant to be that way for me.
Sure. So you get into contract research. So you're with MPI. Now Charles River, as the industry changes and grows. How was that transition? I mean, going from cats and dogs exam room, over to research, working with PIs, black box protocols, things like that. I mean, that had to be a little bit of a shock.
It was a huge shock. I had no idea what I had stepped into. In so many ways. On the positive side, it was, a 9-to-5 job. Like, that was amazing. And when I was on call, I never had to come in. It was just, it was a technician would have to have someone to call and ask a question. And it was like, it was amazing. I remember just feeling such a huge relief of what my personal life could be, but the challenges of what I didn't know I was getting into, I had no idea what GLPs were. So I remember, just in the first few weeks, accidentally throwing a piece of paper away because I didn't think we needed it. I remember using a blue pen, and it just absolute shock of I still initial and date things when I correct them on pieces of paper, it's like, just in case. So that part of it, and understanding, just grasping what GLPs mean and why they are the way they are. And then, the other side of it was just the span of species that we treated. So MPI at that time had everything from rodents to primates. So, I'd never in my life worked with a primate, and now these animals are in my care, and So that was a really steep learning curve for me. But I also was in a team of veterinarians, right? There was a lot of us, and I just had some amazing patient experienced people who taught me so much. But yeah, it was a transition.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
And some people are very hesitant to working with human primates, but sounds like if you've got a good mentorship there, if you have people to help train and teach you, it is feasible, doable.
Yeah.
Um,
It was, I remember, you know, they teach you in vet school, bless you, that you know, there's so much you can do with this degree. And that, but when you've been focused on one area and then you know, particularly when you're feeling stuck, like you feel like there's nowhere to go, it's hard to see how you can do anything else. Because, and I talk to veterinarians about this a lot because I get a lot of questions about my career track and how I ended up where I ended up. And um, I think we have this tendency, women for sure have this tendency in general, but we have this tendency to think like, well, if we haven't done it or we haven't gotten a degree in it, then we're not qualified to go do it. And so if you go to vet school and you're focused on, I don't care what species, but if it's, then all of a sudden you're like, well, now you got to go treat this species. You're instantly questioning yourself, like, I can't do that. It doesn't matter that I had 3 questions about primate medicine on my boards that in at the time when I took my board exams, I was like, I'm never going to touch a monkey. I can't believe I had 3 monkey questions on my boards. And then I did. So, but life forced me into that role where I didn't really have an option but to just say I'm willing to learn a lot of new stuff. But it was to have people around me who respected the education I had. I think that was a really cool thing about lab animal work is that people who go into lab animal medicine, not just veterinarians, but people who work in labs, it's very hard for some people to understand, but they love animals. You can't do that job without loving animals. And as animal lovers and very smart people, they just respect the DVM. At least that was my experience. So even if I had never done something with a monkey or never really worked on a pig before, there was never any question of my ability to figure it out. And that so I always felt very, very supported in it. If I hadn't been in a position of needing to find a new role, I'm sure my personality, I would have doubted myself and said, no, I can't do it. I've never worked on all these species, et cetera. So I probably wouldn't have applied. And that would have been really unfortunate. And so I coach people a lot. I tell whenever I talk to people about this stuff is just, if it makes you uncomfortable, it's probably something you're supposed to try.
Absolutely. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's the way of growth.
Yeah. And I know it's okay if there's times in your life where your periods where it's like, I need to just be comfortable. I need to not be doubting myself. I need to just feel comfortable. And that's fine. Then have those moments in your life, a year, a month, whatever, a decade. But I can guarantee when it's something where you're like, I think I would learn a lot here, but I'm really scared to try because I'm gonna look stupid or I'm gonna fail or something. Like, just those are probably ones you're supposed to try. Because it's that other phrase about there's no failure, there's just learning, right?
Right.
The failure piece that's our own self-judgment, and I am really good at that. So I probably wouldn't have taken that leap, but I'm glad I
Sure.
did. Yeah.
Sure. And so in looking back over your career with MPI, they were, growing at that time. You didn't just stay in a pure clinical role.
Mm.
Looked like you evolved significantly. Love to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, I started in the surgical services department, and as a veterinarian and, did clinical work for a couple of years. But I got into managing that department very quickly. And that was primarily because they just saw that I had this business brain. I had a business degree and I like the business side of things. And so they asked me to be a manager of that department. And then it just kind of grew. We had bought another facility, and so they were wanting to consolidate some groups that were more like discovery groups. And so then all of a sudden I'd had multiple departments, and then some of the in-life groups we wanted to make part of the surgery department. So surgery had its own in-life group so that we could manage those cases effectively. And so I just kind of kept taking on departments. And then I must have been pretty good at it because we seemed to do well as a unit. We had, we were able to recruit well, we retained well, our margins were good, so we were profitable. And so they then asked me to take on the toxicology side as well. So then I basically had, by the time I left there, I was vice president of operations. So I was responsible for all of the departments that had anything to do with animals, including necropsy and pathology. So I ended up in a very, very big role, and learned a lot and hopefully made some positive impacts on the company. But it was a very big role and very far from clinical.
So, you were in that clinical companion animal side, and then you moved into that industry. How did your business acumen grow? How did that change, and how are you able to adapt to that business side? Do you think that evolved from your earlier, hospitality and growth side?
Yeah, for sure. I think the part of hospitality that has stuck with me to this day is that hospitality is really customer service focused business instead of product focused business. And it really is about managing an experience for somebody. And so that is 100% what private practice is, right? It's the business side of private practice, which every veterinarian does. They just don't know they're doing it. So they think they don't like business, but it's like you're doing it. You're managing the experience for that client, you're managing experience for that animal. And ultimately you're doing that because if they don't have a good experience, they're not going to keep giving you business. Right. So my hospitality background was really applicable in practice. When I went into lab animal and got into more leadership roles, it became much more traditional kind of business. There was still a customer associated with it. We had companies that were, paying us to do their research. But in an operational role, that unfortunately, most of the time, the only time I was involved with the customers was when something had gone wrong. Right. But I still had, at one point, 800 people that I was helping manage effective and satisfying careers for. Right. So that kind of component of just managing the experience, whatever that experience might be, that has never left me. The side of that larger role where it was much more learning corporate politics, learning more the finance side of things, operational budget management, development management, all of that stuff was relatively new to me. I mean, it's one thing to learn it in a class, but I had since then been through vet school where everything I learned went out my head. So I found myself a lot. I would do, try to do like professional development courses that were like maybe focused on areas I felt weak in. And I would come up with things where, I'd be doing reports and I'd be trying to figure out overtime or whatever. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, that's a good ratio. That one makes sense. And then I didn't know it was an actual like ratio that people in operations use all the time. Right. So it was a lot of on the job training and common sense.
Self-directed on the job training, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't really have a mentor there. So I was definitely figuring out a lot of that on its own, but I think also I was fresh eyes. So, I was no one really expected me to come in when they hired me. They weren't expecting someone to come in and be a future operational leader. They were just hiring a veterinarian. And so I also was bringing a new perspective. So I was able to look at the way things were being done and kind of question them and wonder if we could do them better. And so the fresh set of eyes is always a good thing. But yeah, it was, I just learned a lot as I went along. The corporate politics side was probably the hardest part of it and not something that you can train for, you know. Um, I mean, it because we were growing super fast, and then 2008 hit, and so I went through 2 rounds of layoffs, and that was some of the worst days of my life, professionally. Um, so it just deck chairs changing around, and power grabs, and you just humans. It's just humans. Um, that is part that you just can't prepare for, but I definitely learned a lot about the kind of leader I wanted to be, and probably more often than not kind of didn't want to be.
So did you sort of craft that on your own? Were there other people that you tried to emulate? How did that come about from your leadership style?
Yeah, it was not intentional. It's not, I wasn't like reading books or anything and then, putting new leadership practices in place or anything. I wish I was that way, but I wasn't. I mean, I also had 2 little babies at home, and um, I had that just wasn't going to be me. But no, I think it was probably positive feedback. So I had like the initial group of people I was responsible for when I first became a manager were the surgical surgeons, the surgical technicians. So the ASR surgeon, the Academy of Surgical Research, so these are like people who have done more surgeries than I have, right? And developed animal models on species I've never cut, and so just brilliant people. Um, but they were a tough bunch, you know. Uh, I I mean, they were tough, and they were they didn't like to be managed. And but it was my job, and so they taught me so much just on I'm sure I made mistakes on how to do things best. But there was just a level of respect there that I don't know what I did to deserve it, but we ended up just getting along very well. Um, and they're, you know, I would think that if you asked them that they would agree that I was a pretty good leader. We actually just recently lost one of them a couple of weeks ago, and I've thought about him a lot because he taught me so much about being a leader and managing professionals, how to manage
Or
people who are really smart and want to be able to do their thing, but you have to step in line when appropriate for the sake of the company. And he was a really amazing man. But
well, tell me more about that. I mean, who were some of the influential leaders that you came across, and what did you what knowledge did they impart on you?
yeah, I think probably the people I learned the most from were not leaders. It was one of my favorite books that I used to give people all the time there was that, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it was like, you don't need a title to be a leader. And um, seeing people who were in non-management roles who just were natural leaders that people followed or wanted to do right by, they were really influential. But I had one woman, Tina Rogers, who
Oh, Tina.
oh, Tina. Yeah, when she she gave me an opportunity that going back to that confidence gap comment I made earlier, when they were starting the Discovery Center, which they were separating out to a different facility, and she was managing that, and they were looking for a head of operations for that area, and I didn't apply for it. And she came into my office and asked me why I hadn't applied for it. And I said, well, I don't know. I didn't think I was qualified, whatever. And she's like, you should apply for it. And here, she's the hiring manager, right? So I was like, I said, okay. And she's like, in the future, if just because you think you're not qualified for something, don't ever let that hold you back. And I mean, it was huge. It was the huge impact on me. And then we had a president for a period of time there, Tim Darrington. And he was a fantastic leader in that he was just very even, there was never any big explosion. There was just a genuine, even leadership. It didn't mean he couldn't get upset about something, but it was almost more that sense of, you've disappointed dad versus made him mad, which has always been a more powerful thing to me. You earn someone's respect and then they don't want to lose it. You earn someone's trust and they don't want to lose it. And so he was a very good leader in that regard too.
Okay, great. So as I was prepping for our meeting, I had a chance to review your recommendations on LinkedIn. Sounds like there was a clear narrative of strong leadership. Kind of going back to this again, you think you were born with it? You fought for it, or how'd you develop it? I mean, you were talking about some of the junior individuals and people that you manage that helped teach you. Was that probably one of your strongest influencers, you think?
Probably. Yeah, I do think there's some amount of being born with it, but I think what I was born with, and it wasn't really a term back then, was emotional intelligence. And so I know now that that's what I have. And, or, back in that day, they probably called it soft skills. Right. And I do think those things can be taught. I do. I know I have people in my life that I would consider, rough around the edges, and I've watched them polish up, and become really successful people in their own right. So I do think some of that was just a natural capability. I'm fairly good at reading a room. I'm pretty good at giving bad news without ruining the relationship or putting someone on the defensive. So, but if I were to encourage people who are interested in leadership and maybe don't feel they were born with that skill set, then, that's what I would develop. I would develop that emotional intelligence. And I mean, there are so many tools out there now to help you do that, now that it's a widespread known thing. But that would be what I would focus on more than anything. That technical experts in anything, you can learn those expertise. You can surround yourself with people who have that expertise. But if you're truly trying to be a leader and you're truly trying to ensure outcomes based on managing people, the soft skills are what are going to get you, make you successful in those roles. You can't make a pretty enough spreadsheet to overcome a bad attitude.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I imagine you've hired several people in your your tenure, just a few.
Yeah.
What soft skills did you look for? How did you evaluate soft skills?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I was probably doing it without even knowing I was doing it. I'm not a really great interviewer, because probably from a technical HR expert perspective, because I make it very conversational. I can feel whether it's going to be a good fit or not, So, do people look me in the eye? Do they shake my hand? Well, that is a big one. As a woman, if you give me the little, limp wrist handshake, that's right off the bat, that's bad. Do they laugh? Are they able to show some humor? Because I've never worked in a work environment where humor wasn't a lifesaver.
Sure.
Especially when you work with animals. And then I one question I always asked was, or it was kind of a two-part question. What causes you stress and how do you handle it? Because, the number one reason people leave jobs is because of their managers, right? So that's on me. So hopefully I can do right by them. And then the other one is going to be if it's just a bad fit and it's causing them stress that's bleeding out into, their personal life. So if they answer that they hate last minute changes or stressful, they need to know what's going to happen every day, anything like that. And I know as a hiring manager, I know that that's not at all what this role is going to be. I just know they're going to be unhappy, so, that's not really a soft skill, thing, but I guess in a way I'm trying to determine whether their personality is going to fit with the job requirement.
Sure. Sure. So within that CRO space, within that clinical drug development space, there is the thought and the feeling of working on something that's greater than yourself, or working on something later down the line. After your CRO experience, like you had gone into that business development side, that business acumen that you had acquired, you're able to utilize that in a different way. Don't often see people going from industry into academia, but yours was kind of a dual role, and I'd love to find out more about that.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was the way I kind of talk about that pivot. My first pivot out of practice was not intentional. It was, I got to get out of here and I need to do something else, right? I ended up learning a ton and growing significantly and meeting amazing people. And I learned all about GLPs and drug development, medical device development, and all those things that I didn't know anything about. When I was leaving MPI, I wanted to be intentional. I wanted to say, okay, what don't I like about what I'm currently doing and what do I want to do differently? And I really needed to get out of that environment. It just was so much work. I worked, it was 24/7. And it was more job than I wanted. To be honest, I just wanted to be able to balance my life a little bit better. And so my intentional seeking, the first thing I wanted to work for someone that I could learn from. I wanted a really solid person that I thought could teach me something. I wanted to learn something new because I had that bug now, right? So I went from business school to vet school and learned all this stuff I never thought I'd learn. And then I went from private practice into lab animal and learned all this stuff. And I get that about myself now. Like I'll get bored. I got to learn something new. So, and then the elevator pitch I ended up coming up with, because I met with over 100 people, in the state of Michigan to figure out what I wanted to do. And no one really knew what to do with a veterinarian with operations experience. Like they see DVM and they're like, I don't know what to do with you, right? Unless you're a veterinarian. So, the pitch I came up with is I like to translate business to science and science to business for people who can't do it for themselves. Because I was in the business of science at a CRO, right?
Right.
So I can read a protocol and know what needs to happen. I can read the data and see what the results are. But I also had learned to say, now, how do we execute that protocol and how do we collect that data, right? So that was my pitch. I met with a lot of people. and I met Connie Chang, who is the head of Fast Forward Medical Innovation at the University of Michigan Medical School. And I just thought she was brilliant. I thought she was just like, I knew I could learn from her. I liked her a lot. For some reason, she was willing to take a risk on me because I'd never done business development. I was operations. Now you're basically putting me kind of in a sales role, right?
Right.
But she did. She took a total risk on me. And that was my job, was I was connecting industry with physician researchers at the medical school. So either to get them sponsored research to help pay for their research, or to find companies to co-develop their products. So if they had a product that had commercial potential, then I would be helping make those connections. So I was a connector, and I liked that a lot. But that's where I learned about licensing, technology transfer, sponsored research, academia in general, how something gets from, that term bench to bedside, that whole commercialization process. I didn't know anything about that prior. So
okay, and that was different in sort of a further extension and next step from the contract research business side. You knew it was there, but just now finally saw how the dots were connected.
yeah, because all the work we were doing at MPI, if it had been in academia, it's because somebody had licensed it from academia and was developing a company right around it.
Right.
But I had worked with the academic researchers. And so, it was really like that step prior to a lot of the companies that I would have worked with at MPI. So.
Okay. And so then you went from that business development side to starting your own company. Was that the next stage?
Yeah.
So just weren't scared enough, weren't
Right.
uncomfortable enough, so just needed to go on your own, hang your shingle.
Yeah, there's a theme here, isn't there? Yeah, and that was, so this is what I encourage veterinarians particularly to create your networks, and create your networks outside of veterinary medicine. Be on LinkedIn. Like it floors me how few veterinarians are on LinkedIn. But particularly veterinarians who want to leave practice or want to explore other opportunities. Industry vets, most of them are already on there, but right. Get out there and start connecting. So what ended up happening was, I was at University of Michigan. I was approached by a former employee from MPI who, his wife was cousins with this guy's neighbor. And
get much more derivative than that.
Yeah, it's exactly how he Scott Ward was his name. He reached out to me and he said, "Hey, my wife's cousin is, his neighbor is starting an animal health company and they're looking for a board member. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. You can give him my number." So they were looking for veterinarians with business acumen. That was essentially it. So, appreciate that Scott thought of me. And, when I met my co-founder, I, told him what I was doing, and I was considering another job at University of Michigan. And he said, give me 2 weeks. Don't accept that job and give me 2 weeks. So I met the other co-founder and heard what they wanted to do, and they had just incorporated. So it was like, I think 3 weeks after or something like that. But he had an idea to develop an animal health company. He wanted to develop pharmaceuticals. And his real goal was he wanted to take that company public. He wanted to use a instrument in Canada called a CPC, or a capital pool corporation, which is the same thing as a SPAC here in the US, which became really popular a few years ago. It wasn't popular back then, so no one understood what we were doing. So I took a huge leap of faith and I said, okay. So I left this safe little academic world and started a company with people I didn't know. And I had so much fun because it was essentially a blank slate. We were developing drugs. We were going after drugs that were only available from compounding pharmacies. But I pivoted us very quickly into diagnostics because essentially what I had the opportunity to do was build a portfolio of products that I know I would have used in practice. And I just felt that diagnostics were the right place to be because veterinarians needed better answers, not necessarily just better treatments. So I used all the experience I had from the University of Michigan Fast Forward Medical Innovation and seeing all these products that were being developed for the human sector. And I can't tell you how many times I would see something and say, oh, that'd be awesome in vet med, right? So that's what I did. I just went out and I looked at hundreds of products and tried to find ones that I thought had application in veterinary medicine, and partnered with a few really good companies, licensed the veterinary rights to those technologies. And also what developed over time was this kind of passion that I have for getting products to veterinarians before they get to human medicine. Because once I got on the industry side of animal health and started recognizing that a lot of the things that are being sold as innovation to veterinary medicine weren't innovation. They just had already been in the human market for 20 years and they're, trying to get more revenue out of 5th generation products. Right. So, I didn't like that. I wanted my veterinary colleagues to get all these technologies I was seeing come out of academia, but they're two really different business models, veterinary medicine and human medicine. And the biggest difference is one is cash-based and one has third-party payers involved. So just because there is a product in human medicine doesn't mean it can translate to vet med, for that big reason. So anyway, that's what I did. I looked for products, developed a pipeline of products. We did go public in Canada, and then we cross-listed to NYSE. And so that was cool. I mean, every entrepreneur I talk to wants to talk about that because, we rang the bell at the NYSE and all that. And it is cool. I mean, I tell people, yep, it was really cool. But running a public company, particularly a pre-revenue public company, is not for the faint of heart. And so it was a lot of work. But what we were able to build and the products we were able to develop and bring to veterinary medicine, we did it. We achieved it. Our first product was launched in March of 21, and it hit the market before it got into human medicine. And it's really awesome technology. So that's what I did. And they're still going strong. I left in May of 21, and they've acquired a whole bunch more products and they're doing the thing.
Fantastic. Now, there are interpretations of the FDA Modernization Act where some people believe it's to remove animal models from preclinical testing. How do you think that would impact animal health? Some of the serendipitous, discoveries for animal health. Would you see that as a detriment, or would you see that as a separate R&D industry?
I think it could be a separate R&D industry. I think as much as that could be a threat to it, the positive thing is the naturally occurring animal disease models that are being used, particularly in chemotherapy solutions. But maybe 10 years ago or so, I wish I could remember the author's name, but there was somebody who was really passionate about trying to say we should be using naturally occurring animal models, because that not only is it, you're reducing the animal use in lab animal, but you're also potentially getting groundbreaking therapies to animals that need it. Right.
Right.
And that really has changed significantly. I mean, there's whole companies built around that One Health concept, right? Of getting chemotherapeutics that have, some measure of safety associated with them, but the efficacy modeling is happening in naturally occurring diseases. So I do think that there could be some, benefit on one side that might make up for some on the other side. and I also think anytime any industry is innovated, like there are opportunities that you just can't see yet for what's going to come out of it. But as a whole, as far as the benefit of society and mankind, et cetera, I think it's the right thing to happen. And I also know how many the cure for cancer is sitting on a shelf somewhere. It is. I mean, having been in academia and seeing these brilliant people doing this brilliant work, and what it takes to get a drug to market, the money it takes, the time it takes, et cetera. Anything we can do in there to streamline that process and reduce that cost will not scrimping on safety, right? Is going to help bring more products to market. And those products can make their way into veterinary medicine without ever having to. I don't think that the majority of solutions that end up in veterinary medicine are because someone was doing the safety work and they thought, oh, this works really well, let's put it in veterinary medicine. I don't think, and it's also because you see a lot of human pharmaceutical companies that have spun off their animal divisions, right?
Right.
And those
Merck Animal Health and that ilk.
used to be Pfizer Animal Health. Yeah. So yeah, they're still making very good products. They're still doing a lot of R&D on the veterinary side, despite not being married to human pharmaceutical companies anymore, right? And there's a lot of companies. I mean, that's what I'm currently doing, is helping another company that is developing a human product. And they thought this probably has a place in veterinary medicine. I kind of have a reputation in the industry to be like, call Stephanie. She might be able to tell you whether there's a place for it in vet med. And when it does, then, they have a new revenue channel that can happen sooner than the human channel. And I talk to companies all the time about it, that they just want to explore. Is that a possibility? That's a valuable thing to human development companies, the smaller ones, right? If they can actually get their product in animals, generate revenue, and prove their product, and generate more data, that absolutely helps them on their track to the human side.
Sure.
And there's a lot of companies that are interested in trying that. And so you have innovation that's getting to veterinary medicine that isn't coming from the fact that there's animal work.
Sure. So tell us about, a little bit about your new company, new product.
Yeah. So this company is called Vetlin, Advanced Veterinary Devices, and it is a spin out of a lab at the University of Utah in the Department of Orthopedics. And it was being developed, it is being developed for the human market. Most of their funding to date has come from the DoD. And it's being developed to significantly benefit battlefield wounds, but it's also being developed to battle orthopedic infections. So essentially what it is it's a pouch that is placed post-operatively in the surgical site, and a catheter is exteriorized from that site before the wound is closed up. And then that catheter allows you to put fresh antibiotic into the surgical site every 24 hours for up to 30 days. And then it's a rate controlled membrane, so it diffuses through that membrane over that 24-hour period. So you always have appropriate level of antibiotic at the surgical site. And then when you are done and the wound's all healed, you deflate the pouch and pull it just like a surgical drain. So you don't need to go back in and resurgerize to remove it. So it's local drug delivery right at the site of infection.
What is being done currently in practice that this is disrupting, if you will?
Yeah, good question. Significant reliance on oral antibiotics or systemic antibiotics, which in some cases is okay, but particularly when it comes to surgical site infections, particularly those that have hardware involved. The biofilms, excuse me, that develop on there, they won't break down with the levels of antibiotics that are given systemically because they don't get to high enough concentrations at the surgical site. So people, and the other concern about antibiotics is that we as veterinarians have a lot of pressure on us to reduce antimicrobial usage, but we don't have solutions to help prevent or treat infections if we stop doing that. And so, this is a way to say you can continue to use antibiotics, but we're going to get you the concentration you need at the site instead of doing systemic exposure of antibiotics. People also will use like calcium sulfate beads that have been impregnated with antibiotics, and those can be placed in the wound. But those lose their payload within the first few days after they've been placed, and then you have a foreign body in the site. And yeah, so it's really, there is no other device that's local delivery of antibiotics where you can give it a fresh antibiotic payload every day.
Okay. Okay. Well, what advice would you give to younger or mid-career lab animal vets looking to branch out into industry research, business development, or even entrepreneurship?
Yeah, big thing is that network. So develop your network. And you don't have to go to networking meetings and pass out business cards. And if you do, great. But nobody likes to do that. I'm an introvert. No one likes to go out and do that. Just tell yourself nobody really likes to do it. But if you do it, like give yourself one goal. Like I'm going to give away one business card at this meeting. And once I do, I can leave. And then the next meeting, maybe it's two, right? But you can virtually network so well now through LinkedIn and other online, opportunities that you really don't have to leave home to start networking. If you go to trade shows, go to the industry vet meetings. They always have, industry, the AAIV meetings. That those people are super friendly. They're all in industry, and they would love to tell you about their career paths. And network, outside of veterinary medicine. So, I can tell you, having started a company, launching another company now, I pull from my network all the time. Lawyers, HR professionals, recruiters, just everything, because you never know when you could need them. And you'd be surprised when you start developing those networks that people start saying, they'll start referring people to you, right?
Right.
So network, don't be afraid, network, know that your network is an asset and you have to develop it, and it'll be super, super valuable. It also allows you to talk to a lot of people that do things that you don't do. So get curious about them, ask them what they like about their job, how did they get there? And you'll start crafting what it is you want. And don't come up with like what it is you want. It might take you a minute to figure that out, but when you do, tell people what it is, and then always ask people for an introduction. So if you're networking and you say, well, I'm currently a lab animal vet, but I'm really interested in getting into industry, or, I'd like to do more research or whatever, then ask people for connections. Just say, do you have anyone in your network that, I could maybe buy a cup of coffee and, pick their brain? You will be shocked how many people are willing to do that for you. And you'll just be growing that network and developing your vision of what you want along the way.
Fantastic. Well, where can people go to learn more about you and learn more about your company?
So you can find me on LinkedIn.
There we go.
So feel free to link in with me on LinkedIn, because I love when people have heard about me from somewhere and they contact me on there. So by all means do that. And then Vetlen, you can read more about our device at Vetlen, which is VETLEN.com.
Hey, fantastic. What's one final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
Oh, that's a good one. I have so many. I guess the thing I would want veterinarians to realize and internalize and is just know how awesome you are. Like, becoming a veterinarian is hard. Being a veterinarian is hard. And if you just take a minute to reflect on that and think of everything you learned and all the skills you have that really do translate outside of veterinary medicine, they do, because I'm living proof of that. And just really, take some time to just revel in that and really boost yourself up, because that hopefully would give you the confidence you need to say, I want to go out and see what else is out there for me.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully look forward to connecting again.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right.
Yeah, I think that was great. Hopefully there was, some nuggets for people who listen. And if I can, do anything, I mean it, people can contact me. I love to hear from people, and particularly really help mentor veterinarians who feel like they want to try something new and they feel stuck. I know my career path is inspirational to those people, and I like to help them see they don't have to be stuck.
Well, listen, appreciate your time. All right. Thanks a lot. Have a
Thank you
great
for
one.
having me.